Hello, it is me. It is Monty. If you see conditioner in my hair, no, you don't. um. Anyway, hello everybody. It is me. It is Monty. It is 2025. Historically, over the past couple of years, I have done a welcome to 2025 reading vlog. I don't know if that's what this is going to be. I'm gonna maybe call it a reset. Who knows? Not I. It's kind of a bad day to do a reset because my plan for today is to go see some movies and do a little bit of reading along the way. But like, because my reading goal is always a singular book. 2024, we're not going to get into that too much today. Maybe we'll see. But 2024 was not Monty's reading year. I read 96 books, and that's a little bit of cheating. I say a little bit of cheating because I read the Under the Mistletoe collection from Amazon Stories, and it's for 5 books, and I counted them individually, even though I read them as a singular audiobook. So it could be 91, could be 96. I mean, who's counting? Me. I'm letting you know. Other people don't count that as cheating. I would probably count that as cheating. But it's definitely my worst reading year since 2018. First time since 2018 I haven't read 100 books. I allowed myself to feel comfortable with the fact that I was just not a reader last year. There were several months where I just completely crashed out, didn't read a single thing. A lot of that is chronicled over behind the paywall on Patreon, where I was pretty successful. I want to say in 2022, I started I know I did it in June of 2022. I started doing this thing where I was vlogging for them every other month. And in 2022, there was a lot of times where it was a complete failure, where I was missing days left, right, and center, and I was not a cute look. But in 2024, might be actually 2023, I started doing that. I don't remember. What is time? But last year, I was much more on it. I was much more ready to do it, geared up. Let's get this done. Also, if you missed me for Vlogmas, that's where that was. There's like 29 videos. Not 29 videos. There's 20, might only be 25, 26 videos over there of me talking about stuff. So if you've really missed me, there's a whole lot of content behind that paywall. And for December, those Vlogmas videos are at the $3 tier, but every other month is at the $6 tier. And also, if you miss me, I'll be back over there next month in February. So if you want to know what I'm reading in February, that's where that's at. But just looking back at 2024, the books I was reading, they weren't necessarily bad, but my relationships with books was just not in a place where I was devouring them, which is perfectly fine, I think. I also think that coming off of 2022 and 2023, where I was reading like 150 books, was not sustainable for Monty. I think I was down deep in the bad place when I was reading that many books. I do think that around 100 books is more of a realistic goal for me, just because that is a number I've hit repeatedly, like 100. We'll see how I go about that. I'm trying to, in 2025, have a much better relationship with reading. In 2024, I found like I was definitely doing that. I would definitely eliminated the reading for content from my life, and so now I just want to be able to find a happy reading routine that works for me. I don't know if I want to read every day. I don't know if I want to be that person. But I want to find some kind of a system that's working for me alongside the other things that I'm doing in my life. So today the plan is definitely to see Baby Girl, because I've been putting that off for a hot minute. And I was thinking I would see A Complete Unknown. I might swap out A Complete Unknown for something else. We'll see what I'm going to do here. I do want to go see Wicked again, because I do want to talk to you guys about Wicked, because I bored the patrons to death about my Wicked thoughts. So if I could get them out over here, January 1st feels like a really good place to do that, because I literally just finished Wicked, the book, for the second time like a couple days ago. So we might have a Wicked discussion over here that I have bored my patrons with. Anything else? The book I plan to start today with, I feel like that would be something of interest, but I don't know yet. I think it's going to be a short romance, because I have a couple of those on my Libby account from their little Libro ALC program. I might start reading Immortal by Sulin Tan, because I've had that arc from the publisher for a hot minute now, and I have the ebook of that from the Libro people. So I might listen to that so I can get my NetGalley feedback back. So that would be good to do. I think that's out on January 28th. It's out sometime this month, so I might listen to some of that. I don't know if this is going to be, I don't know if this is going to be a daily vlog. I don't know if this is going to turn into a weekly situation to kind of like get myself back in the weekly mode so I can do that for the patrons next week. I don't know what's happening over here. And in 2024, after the election, I kind of convinced myself that I have just no interest in producing public facing content ever again, to be honest with you guys. I don't really know if I want to be a known entity on the internet like that. We'll see what I decide to do, but this is a video you guys are going to be seeing. Maybe I'll get out a best and worst video. I'm not super motivated to make either one of those, to be honest with you. It just feels like a view grab. So if those happen to be videos that you see in your feed, then congratulations, I decided to make them. But right now, I'm kind of leaning in the do I really need to do that camp? But for now, I'm going to go so I don't miss my bus, because I'm pretty sure, yeah, I'm going to have to leave here to make it pretty soon here. So this is just the little intro. We'll be back. We'll be talking books. We'll be talking movies. We'll be talking the chili I have in my slow cooker. So sit back, relax. Hopefully, you're not hungover from your New Year's Eve festivities. But let's have some fun. Okay, so it is the next day. It is no longer, what was yesterday? Wednesday? It's now the 2nd of January. And I did, oh my goodness, are we done? Are we catching up to me? Okay. So yesterday I did do a reading. We're going to talk about The Favorite by Lane Fargo here in a second. I have lots of things to say about that. But I teased that we might talk about Wicked, because I had planned to see Wicked yesterday. And I had to walk out of the movie theater. Now, to be honest with you, this was like, I think the 4th time that I had seen this movie. So like, I didn't really need to see it a 4th time to come and talk to you guys about it. But I was like, I literally just finished this book. Maybe if I go see the first act again, I'll have like more thoughts and opinions. And to be honest with you, having just finished the book and already being annoyed with the changes and then seeing the changes, I couldn't do it. So I left after, I want to say I left right before I'm Not That Girl, because to be honest with you, I just hate Alphaba in the movie. I hate the Alphaba the musical, and she is such a flat character. And there's something against Cynthia Erivo. I don't think Cynthia Erivo is like doing like any bad acting or anything. Like, truth be told, I don't really care for Cynthia Erivo all that much, but I don't hate Alphaba of the musical because of Cynthia. I think Cynthia does a great job. I think her vocals are nice. I think the first time I saw the movie, it was poorly mixed, and then I went to see it again in IMAX, and then I saw it again in a regular theater. See, yesterday was my 4th time. It was the 4th time. So I do think all the sound issues that I had the first viewing have been cleared up. But the Alphaba of the movie is not an Alphaba that I personally care about. And at first I was like, okay, well, the Alphaba of the book is not really entirely from her perspective. We're learning about Alphaba from other people. But I still feel that even though we're learning about Alphaba from her father, from Bach, from Galinda, from Fiyero, from herself in this kind of altered mind state that she is before Dorothy eventually arrives back at Kimiko, all of those people still portray Alphaba in a much more, I want to say, not even sympathetic, but there's a more well-rounded view of who she is. And I also feel that the Alphaba of the book is much more confident in the woman that she is throughout the journey that she is on the story. Whereas in the musical, in this adaptation of the musical, at least, Alphaba is like not as sure of herself. She's not as confident in her person. And then I also feel as though the musical strips things away from other people to make Alphaba this more like Matilda, chosen one-esque person. And to me, that's just deeply unserious. Like, it does bother me to a small degree that in order to make some of the points that the book is making and that the musical wants to make, we have to like strip things away from other characters. Like, Galinda being an accomplished sorceress in her own right is eliminated so we can see her as an act, like seeing her aligned with the wizard and making that like make sense to people, instead of like, because to me is an easier thing for people to follow because Galinda has no power and the wizard is able to like align her with power. She's like, oh, see, that's why she's choosing the wizard over her friendship. And it's just like, that's such a boring, reductivist like take, when she could just be an accomplished sorceress and still want to align with the powers to be because it has worked for her. Also, to be fair, the friendship between Galinda and Alphaba in the book is also not necessarily that of the movie. Although, again, even in the movie, I don't really feel as though there is this like great, I don't want to say reasoning or explanation, but the movie is much more episodic in terms of like, we just go from one scene to the next scene, and oftentimes the two scenes are in direct conflict with one another. And I think there's something to be said about that, that could make sense. Like the scene between Elphaba and Galinda's first meeting, where Elphaba is just like horrified and snapping back at the idea that Galinda would ever want to help degreenify her because she loves being green so much. And then literally in her next song, it's like, yeah, that's not important to me, but yeah, why not, Mr. Wizard? Also, Elphaba being, this has always bothered me, even before my reread. But Elphaba being like just riding the wizard's dick so hard in the musical has like it always bothered me. It has always bothered me because it's very clear in the book that she does not care about that man. To be honest with you, most people in the book do not fuck with the wizard like that, and so that being like this big change, I think that is 100% inspired by the MGM movie and whatever Frank was writing in his little books back in the day. Because in Wicked, The Life and Times of the Witch of the West, the people of Oz do not give two fucks about that wizard. And oftentimes people are afraid to even talk about him because he is much more authoritarian in the books. In Wicked, The Life and Times of the Witch of the West, it's a much more austere Oz. And also the drought that is mentioned in the movie is a thing that is like actively occurring during Elphaba's childhood, even into her years at Shiz. And that's part of like what is facilitating her friendship with, I don't want to say facilitating the friendship between her and Glinda, but it's not an easy time in Oz throughout all of this. So there are some changes, and some changes I think make sense. Like I do think that for the musical, restructuring the sort of like love triangle and like who's involved in the love triangle makes sense to a degree. I think that it obviously it reduces the number of people you see in the cast, and I think it does kind of streamline and make simpler some of the things that are happening from the book, and it pulls from the book a little bit. So I'm not offended so much as that. I'm not offended at the idea of Fiyero being this composite character of Fiyero and this like other person in the book, and them having a combined personality that is more the other person really than Fiyero. Even like adult Fiyero is not really the Fiyero that we get in the musical. That's all fine to me. I think that makes sense. Obviously, like things have to change, but overall, I think there are sort of like major structural changes that don't really love it for me, and actively made me hate watching the movie yesterday. So I had to leave before the one scene you get of Elphaba and Fiyero of their time at Shiz. I think it's just a little too deeply unserious. And to be honest with you, I'm not necessarily excited for part two, just knowing what they do in part two in the musical. And to me, that is just the most deeply unserious of it all. I mean, some of it is teased at the beginning of part one, which is fine. I think that's, sure do it. I also think that the framing of the musical / the movie of it being Glinda telling the story, I do think that kind of pushes Elphaba to the side. And also in the movie, Glinda is she's just a more complex character than Elphaba is in the movie. The Elphaba in the movie is a simpleton. She is just like, she's so self-sacrificing that it's deeply unserious. And I also think that what I don't like about the movie is, having reread the book, the title of like Wicked Witch is like something that Elpha like claims for herself, and it's kind of like this like tongue-in-cheek like haha thing. And again, to like have that be something that is like forced upon her, it's just like whatever. So ultimately, I do think that I do like the book, and I just hate Stephen Schwartz for his contributions to Wicked. I think the songwriting is great. Thank you for all those little Disney classics that I grew up on. I don't have any issue necessarily with the music, but I do have an issue with what him and the book writer of the musical did to the story. Because I think the story, it works, obviously. It's been running for 25 years now. Not 25 years, but it's been running for, 2 decades now. And people have been, eating it up. And I saw this movie 4 times in a movie theater. Well, 3.5 times in a movie theater. But like, a little deeply unserious. I also watched Baby Girl yesterday. Baby Girl, I hated that movie so much. Everything that I hated about Challengers, I hated about Baby Girl. And at least, Nicole Kidman was giving a great performance in this movie, but some of the things they were asking her to do were just like, again, so deeply unserious. I was just like, what are we even doing here? Like, I do think that Baby Girl is hardly a movie. To me, in the land before everything was a big blockbuster, and like you could put a small movie in the theater and it could like maybe earn some money and we could all keep it pushing, this movie would do that. But now we live in like this, it has to be an awards contender or it has to be a blockbuster, and the mid-range movie isn't necessarily dead, but like if you're putting it out in December, like you want it to win awards, and I don't think Baby Girl needs to win awards. I think that this could have come out in the summertime just like Challengers and not be in the awards conversation at all. I did like Harris Dickinson in this movie. I do think that he was robbed last year. He didn't get nothing for the Iron Claw, him and Zach. Both should have been nominated for their performances in that movie. And in this one, again, he has nothing to do. He's not really a character, which is fine because the movie's not really about him. It's supposed to be about Nicole Kidman, but even Nicole Kidman's character is a little unserious, and the journey that she goes on is a little bit unserious, particularly when I don't know. I think that for the movie to essentially be Antonio Banderas getting cucked and then being mad about getting cucked, and so he just does the kinky things that his wife wanted him to do at the beginning of the movie that he was uncomfortable with. It was a little unserious. It's a little unserious to me, and I do think that Challengers and Baby Girl are like two halves of the same coin. And if you like Challengers, you probably did like Baby Girl, but because I thought that Challengers was an underwritten movie, I also think that Baby Girl is an underwritten movie. So, hate that for me. Now let's talk about The Favorites. The Favorites by Lane Fargo. This is what I was listening to as I walked to the movie theater yesterday because I thought the public transportation was going to be running, and then it wasn't running, so I had to walk all the way to the movie theater, which I almost turned back and went home. But I was enjoying this book so much that I was like, let me just keep walking because I want to keep listening to this book. So this book, we are following Katarina Shaw and what was this man's name? Heath Rocha. And we meet them at the end of their career. So we are told at the beginning that they had this epic final skate, and we are going to kind of learn what happened after this skate. We know that Katarina has been accused of many things. We understand that they are in the figure skating realm. They're ice dancers. Again, I didn't know anything about this book going in. I think at some point in 2024, I had read the synopsis of this, but it wasn't something that was readily available front of mind. This was from Libro FM, so I did get this complimentary through them. I will have a link down below if you want to pre-order a copy of the audiobook. I think the audio production of this was really well done. It's what I listened to. It's what I can recommend. And Katarina Shaw, Heath Rocha, ice dancing. So we meet them early in their lives. They're like 10 years old, I want to say, and we are in Illinois. We're outside of Chicago, and we're learning about Katarina Shaw. She's watching this elite ice dancer performing at the Olympics, and she's like, I'm going to be an ice dancer. And so it's not necessarily two timelines, but we have the timeline of everything from their past to the 2018 games were in Sochi. Am I thinking correctly? The Sochi Olympics, from their little childhood all the way to the Sochi Olympics. That's the past timeline. But then in the present, we have interspersed these commentators. So people from the ice dancing judging panel or the International Olympic Committee or fellow ice dancers that knew them or that kind of a thing. So it is, in a way, it does at times give, I don't want to say Daisy Jones, but it does, it's something like that because it's like a documentary is being made about this epic final skate between Katarina Shaw and Heath Rocha. And so it does have that retrospective element of the Daisy Jones, but because it is so like heavily sports focused, I don't want to say if you like Daisy Jones, you'll like this. I think that if you liked Carrie Soto is Back, you might like this. I gave Carrie Soto is Back 5 stars. This, I don't know what to give it yet. When I was reading it, I was like, this is giving 5 stars. And then I finished it and I was like, 4. Because the way this book ends is just like, what you need to know is that Katarina Shaw and Heath Rocha it's a lot of, we're almost there and then 10 steps back, 2 steps forward, 30 steps back. It's a lot of that kind of like push and pull. And at times it feels a little, I don't want to say manipulative. I do think that it is I was invested. I was really enjoying where the story was going. I wanted to see what was going to be, what was going to happen here. But at the same time, it's like I wanted something. I wanted like some payoff, and I don't really feel like any part of the book actually like satisfied me. I don't really know if I got the payoff that I wanted, but I was so invested in these characters. I wanted to keep going. This is, again, it's very messy. Heath and Katarina are not well off. They both have some kind of like struggling going on in their backgrounds and their family lives are not necessarily from the best. With Heath Rocha in particular, it was giving a little bit of stereotypical. I don't want to say too much more than that. Also, a lot of this book is focused on Katarina Shaw, not necessarily on Heath Rocha. That's also something that I feel like it's an ice dancing team. It's a duo, and we see a lot of, in the narrative, I feel we get a lot of Katarina, not so much of Heath, and that I don't really know how to feel about that one in particular. Because again, it's not like Carrie Soto is Back is about a single tennis player. It wasn't like, oh, Carrie Soto plays double. but we're not going to focus on our partner. We're going to focus on her. It's no, she's a single tennis player, so we're going to focus on her. And like Carrie Soto's back, it also has a romantic element between between the characters. And so here we're following Katerina and Heath as they go from childhood friends to kind of lovers to this like fucked up situation that they have with one another. And I will say that in terms of like a messy soap opera style romance, this delivers. I think this is it's so much. I do think that Lane Fargo watched I, Tanya and was like, I'm gonna not take, the story of Tanya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan, but we're going to kind of like take the vibe is the feel of that, and like take it and make it my own. This does feel like something that Lane Fargo has worked on extensively and was like really invested in writing. And I think that if this is the quality, the caliber of the writing that is in They'll Never Learn, I see why you guys like that book. Because again, like I was so deeply engaged. I wanted to listen to this book. I had this book at 3.5 times speed. I don't listen to anything at 3. We'll take it back and listen to Wicked, The Life and Times of Wicked West. Eventually at 3.5 times speed. But I listened to the book for 2 months. Okay, I was listening to that for almost like 2 months before I kicked it up to 3.5 times speed. I needed to know what was happening in this story because of the way that it's written, the way that it's structured. There would be kind of like these little mini cliffhangers he could be going. It's almost like the Dan Brown of writing, where he does like those short chapters to like propel you through the story. And so she would do a similar thing where we would end like a normal chapter, because some of the chapters are just, normal third person perspective from kind of Katerina's point of view. And then we would get to the commentary and you would get like these just quick sound bouts. It wasn't, I think that Daisy Jones, again, I haven't reread Daisy Jones since like 2022, I want to say. But in Daisy Jones, it's kind of like these extensive, I don't want to say monologues about a scene, but it's more drawn out about a particular thing. Whereas when we would switch over to this is why I would liken it more to Carrie Soto's back, is the Carrie Soto things were like a single page. It was, like a page and a half. It wasn't like these extensive drawn out sequences. So when we would get to the commentators, whether it was the ice dancers or the IOC judge or whoever we were cutting to, right, the former teammates or whatever, it would be like these little quick soundbite moments that you could just see as the talking head in a documentary. And it felt like it was also like the forward momentum, and it was also adding something to the cliffhanger that we just got. And then even those would lead into another cliffhanger that Katerina would pick up in the next, regular chapter thing from her perspective. And so I think that if that's the quality, again, if that's the caliber of the writing, I can understand why y'all were reading it up. I think this is an excellent book to kick off the year with. I want to say it comes out like the 2nd or 3rd week of January. I don't think it might be a January 28th title, but it's an excellent one to start off the year. It has a lot of forward momentum. It's really compulsively readable. Even if this isn't like a 5-star new favorite for you, I do think that this is the kind of book where if you are invested in the characters and you kind of, and I can't imagine you not being, but if there's ever a point in 2025 where you're kind of in a slump, you don't know what to read, I think this could really slot in and kind of just like kick you back into gear and get you invested and ready to keep rolling and keep with the punches and see what you could come up with next. So I really did enjoy the favorites. I don't know if I'm going to give it a full 5 stars, if I'm going to wind it back down to a 4. I'll have to figure that out in my own time. But for right now, I'm really happy. I'm going to go ahead and stop talking now because I need to finish getting ready for work. I'll be back later today. Not today because I get off pretty late, but I'll be back at some point in the future, probably tomorrow afternoon, to talk about what I pick up next. But so far, my reading year is off to a really great start. Hello, everybody. It has been maybe a week. It's probably been about a week because 2025 started last Wednesday, right? Started on a Wednesday. Today is the 9th. And last time we talked, I was finishing Know Your Newlyweds, which I was starting it. Ultimately, I wound up not loving that as much as I was hoping to, or I think I had just finished The Favorites and we had talked about The Favorites, and I was going to find something else to listen to. And so I went to work the next day after I talked to you guys about that, or later that same day, whenever it happened. And Know Your Newlyweds was an ALC from Libro, so I got that for free months ago, and it felt like I was seeing that in a couple months back to back, and so I grabbed it partially because Tyler Posey from Teen Wolf fame and also the little boy in Maid of Manhattan, who played J-Lo's son, he did the narration, and I was like, I've never listened to a narrated audiobook by Tyler Posey, and I feel like he's also, I want to say was the follow up to the wedding book, the honeymoon disaster that Christina Lauren came out with. I think he did that, or maybe that was Harry Shum Jr. Anyway, one of the I wanted to listen to Tyler Posey's voice, right? And so this was written by 2 authors, and then it was executive produced by Elena Armis. What that exactly means to me, I don't know. I don't really know what Elena Armis. I think she was really just there to kind of sell the book by these lesser, I won't say lesser known, but like maybe not as prolific in the romance space authors. But to me, this just didn't work. It was an audio original, and so there wasn't a lot of description that was happening. It was more of like along the lines of the graphic audios, and I'm not necessarily the person who listens to those super frequently. I have listened to the graphic audio for Brandon Sanderson's Elantris, which if I ever get around to finishing the Cosmere, you'll hear me talk about that. So I have like a small experience. I've dabbled with that kind of experience in reading, and for Elantris that really did work for me. Spoilers, but here it just didn't. I felt like there was something that, just because it was so mundane, it was these 2 people who had met on a dating app and they were working together to be on this new show. Not this new, it was a reboot of this game show called Know Your Newlywed. And so it was like a fake dating, fake marriage, trying to be on this game show, trying to just see what's going to happen, and we know that they're going to fall in love. And it was 4 hours, and so it wasn't bad. The performances by both of the narrators, Tyler Posey and the other person who was voicing the female character, they were both fine, but just on a story level wise, it's a little bit unserious for me, particularly in the 3rd act, like kind of groveling and the what we had to do. I almost wanted the roles to be reversed. I feel like they weren't reversed because they were trying to what was the word I'm looking for? Subvert reader expectations. And I just feel like this is one of the times where I did not want my expectations subverted, and I would have liked something a little bit more straightforward than what we got. So after I finished that, the next day I was like, I want to get the ball rolling, because in 2025 I wanted to really, get back on the horse. I wanted to come back to content creation, not necessarily full time, but more consistently, more like I wanted to have like a more clear vision of me putting out this content. I wanted to revamp my reading and to find a reading groove, a reading routine that was really working for me. So I was like, if I just continue to read every day, a little every day, then that'll be something that works for me. And so I started listening to You and I Rewritten by Chip Pons, because this was either an ALC this month or it was another time where it was an ALC from a previous month. And so I was like, I'll just listen to this, particularly because I had been on NetGalley late 2024, early into 2025. I mean, we're still early into 2025, but earlier. And they have another book, I want to say, called Winging It or something. It's like a blue cover, and it's like this couple, and they look like they're embracing having fun with one another. So I was like, okay, I don't want to request that because I have not read Friendship Ponds before, so let me read this book. And You and I Rewritten is so bad. We are following a new hire at this small publishing house just because they're not one of the big 5 in the world of the book, but they do seem to be very successful. They have a name for themselves. So we're following our main characters. He starts his first day at this job, and he is immediately, I want to say smitten, but he's taken in by he's like the son of like the person who founded the company, essentially. And so there is kind of like a power imbalance between these 2 roles, even though we're meant to believe that there's not a power imbalance between these 2 people and that they're on the same level, even though they are very clearly not at the same level. And so we're seeing him as he's going through his life. But the biggest offense that I've had with this book is that at a certain point, these characters don't get along. They're not really seeing eye to eye. And then there's like a 4-month time. They go on a date of sorts. And after this date, the book skips ahead 4 months, and they're in like the honeymoon stage of their romance. And so we don't really get to see any of them like bonding or getting back on the right foot after we saw them start off on the wrong foot. And it's just like one of the worst things that you can do to me in a romance is, one, skip any amount of time, but to skip the crucial relationship building part of the book just feels it just feels fucking stupid. Like, it feels like something that an immature, unpolished like person would just attempt to do in a story they're writing for themselves and not for people to spend their hard-earned money on. And so that left like a super bad taste in my mouth, and I've not read that book in the past week. I've not returned to it. I've not revisited it. I've not tried to finish it. At this point, I want to say I'm like 45, maybe even almost 50% of the way through. And it's just like so not good. At the point where I'm at in the story now, I want to say it's around the holidays, and our characters are spending time together, and they're getting to see the family dynamics. And there's like a lot of trauma dumping that was happening. I'm saying trauma dumping. It's just like, it just felt like so many cliches of just like these unhappy queer men. It's just like, I don't care. Like, I don't care that you're this little sad white boy who's just listening to Taylor Swift all the time. It is just, and I, I'm not invested in it, to be honest with you, at this point. And so part of me's been really happy that I did not request their follow-up book, although one would hope that the follow-up book to this would be better and, more polished than what I am currently reading and experiencing, but there's no necessarily guarantee of that. And so I do feel on some level that I have dodged something of a bullet by not jumping into that immediately. In the intervening time, I have been back on my TV movie watching grind. If you're a patron, then you know that I talked about watching the Bob Dylan movie, A Complete Unknown. I thought that was a complete flop. I thought that Tim Tam did some of the worst acting, not only of his career, but just in 2024, period. Like between Dune Part 2, where he was Paul Atreides, and then this movie, it's like so bad, so bad. Also, now that the awards picture is coming into fruition, I do feel that Austin Butler not getting any kind of supporting nomination for Fade Ralph. I mean, I could have seen it coming because nobody is showing any kind of attention to Dune 2, but I don't know. Even the bike riders. I was taking something with the bike riders. Although the bike riders getting anything with a complete long shot was never going to happen, particularly when that movie came out, like February? Yeah, it was not happening. But I take all of that to say, I guess it had to be after February because Dune 2 is like March or something. Still, it was never going to happen for the bike riders, but it was a decent little time. I think it's now on Peacock, so if you have Peacock, go check it out. Yeah, Tim Tam in Complete Unknown does not deserve any of the awards attention he is receiving. Some of the worst acting of his career. After that, I've been marathoning The Lincoln Lawyer. Netflix did not used to get my money, but XO Kitty's about to come out, so you might see me rereading the Jenny Han books in this series. Tell the Boys. I might rewatch those movies as well because XO Kitty season 1, I had to watch it. And so since I have been paying for Netflix, I started up The Lincoln Lawyer. So good. Yeah, Tyra, she might have been really putting those America's Next Top Model girlies through hell, but every time I see Yaya DaCosta pop up on my screen, I'm so happy. Talk about some of the, I would say it's like next level acting, but she is just a solid talent. And would we have Yaya DaCosta on our TV screens if Tyra was not out here putting people through hell? I don't know. I don't know if we would. And so for that alone, I'm happy for it. Now, should Yaya have won her season? That's also probably, to be honest with you. What was it? It was her or Eva. I don't like Eva, so I wasn't necessarily upset, but still. Or maybe it wasn't Eva and Yaya. Doesn't matter. We're not here to talk about America's Next Top Model. So I've been watching Lincoln Lawyer. I've finished all 3 seasons. Is the 3rd season that good? No, but I feel like season 2 was not necessarily all over the place, but it was kind of wrapping up stuff from season 1 and trying to do a whole new storyline. So it was a little bit messy. I don't necessarily like Mickey Haller as a person or as a character, but I do own some Michael Connelly. I own one Michael Connelly book, and it's not even in the world of Lincoln Lawyer, but I will be reading Michael Connelly this year. Will I read all 38 novels? Probably not. I'm not crazy. I'm not dedicated. I'm not a Chandler. Chandler could do it. Chandler could read 38 books by one author and she would just, fly. I'm not going to be that. But I will at some point do Michael Connelly. I don't know if we'll do a reading vlog in one of these months, but it'll happen either here or behind the paywall over on Patreon. So Michael Connelly, his books are my future because I have to have something. And I do like dad fiction. I like dad shows. So The Lincoln Lawyer, go watch it. Go have a good time. Season 1 has an Ugly Betty reunion because the actress who played Amanda Tannen and the actor who played Henry, they're in that season together. I mean, the actress who played Amanda is always on the show, but it was their reunion for season 1. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then, like I said, Yaya comes in season 2. You love to see it. Overall, it's a very solid cast. So I've been watching that. I'm about to start Yellowstone because why not? I've heard that I want to say it's like Succession meets Cowboys, and I did not like Succession. Sorry, but I do like Cowboys, and I really want to watch the spinoff of this show called The Madisons, or I think it's the name of the show. It hasn't premiered yet. And according to some Googling, I can't just like start with that show. And so I'm just going to watch the 5 seasons of Yellowstone because I already pay for Peacock. And then I'll start watching The Madison when it eventually drops. It has Patrick J. Adams and Michelle Pfeiffer, and that's enough for me. I like Patrick Adams, haven't seen him since Suits, and Michelle Pfeiffer is always a good time. So love that for me. I might watch some of the other spinoffs because there's some, for whatever reason, some quality, not a spinoff. I'm going to watch Landman, which isn't necessarily a spinoff, but that has Demi Moore and John Hamm. How can you say no to Demi Moore and John Hamm as series regulars? So I'm about to be in the Taylor Sheridan cinematic universe. for the foreseeable future, but I am committed to still reading. In 2025, I want to find a healthier balance between the two. I feel like 2024 is a lot of extremes. It was a lot of extreme reading and extreme binging. Like I binged entire seasons of Housewives last January. And throughout the year, I caught up on Dubai, and I caught up on New York, and I caught up on Salt Lake City, and I caught up on Potomac. So I was really invested in catching up on a lot of that. And then I feel like my reading was kind of not necessarily on the back burner, but it was definitely decentered. And right now I feel like it's kind of lingering in a corner. And that also went with movies. Like, so I was like watching TV and movies and not music. I'm never gonna be a music person, but at least not on that level. Not on that level. So I want to find a healthier balance of having all three of these things in my life. And so that's kind of the focus going forward, specifically for the rest of this week. I'm reading some things for the patrons this week, so if you see me again, it will be to update you guys on You and I Rewritten, my final thoughts on that, and then maybe I might squeeze in something else between the books that I'm reading for the patrons alongside into here. But if you want those details, I will leave a link to the Patreon down below. Hello. So I think I told you guys this, that I was reading You and I Rewritten by Chip Pons, and I just want to let you guys know that book was horrible. Like, it was no good. Tomatoes, 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 up, down, left, right, center. Totally not worth anybody's time. So then again, I told you this was a romance set up publishing. Tell me why. Tell me why we skip over these two people getting to know one another. So our main character is starting a new job. I think it's like Arthur Publishing House. It's like the smaller imprint. Not an imprint. It's like the smaller publishing house, kind of like a boutique thing, but it's like prestigious enough, right? So I think he was in Chicago, and he's now back in New York City where he grew up. He's back in the heart of publishing, and he is so excited to be starting this new job. He's back with his bestie. Like, he is living his best life. He comes into work and he sees his coworker. They keep saying this man is not his boss, but like everyone talks about him like he's the boss. His name is on the fucking building, and they have to go to HR to get their relationship approved. And it's so easy because he's not the boss, even though again in every subsequent reference to this man, that's the boss. Okay. But we skip over these two people entirely getting to know one another. We see them meeting each other like as professional colleagues, and then the book jumps at some point and they are just in the honeymoon era. And not only are they in the honeymoon era, these two men have no conflict whatsoever. These two men are just getting along like peanut butter and jelly. Like like, it is crazy to me how no conflict, how low angst this book is. And I understand that some people like that. Some people like low angst, no conflict. But these people, if someone was like, I hate pineapple on pizza, and their love interest is like, I'm going to put pineapple on the pizza, they'd be like, you know what? I actually love pineapple on pizza. It is so painful to read about, right? So we're seeing our main character, and he's like editing this new book. Like, he gets this in his inbox like on his first day at the agency at the little thing. He brings this to the meeting. He's like, you guys, this book is like, it's speaking to my soul, it's speaking to my heart, and I think we should acquire this book. And the rest of the team agrees. And like, what, this is like really profound. Like, you're right, this is great. And this is when these two men decide they're going to team up and work together, because of course they are. And so they're working together on this book, and like I said, it jumps forward, and then there's honeymoon relationship, and then so much of the rest of the book is about these two men, and they're so happy together, and they're this and they're that, and I'm just like waiting for there to be conflict, waiting for there to be some kind of like, what is happening. And then in like the last hour of this audiobook, some things start to develop. So throughout the course of the story, our main character, he had been having we knew he and his father were estranged. Like, it was brought up very early on that his parents were divorced, and he grew up with his mother, and his mother remarried, and the man that she remarried was always like a father to him, because his father always had visitation, but like he never showed up. I think that's ultimately learned that his father was an alcoholic, but we learned that he was never really around. And then later on in the book, when they're going to this little charity event, we find out that this is a charity event for people who are drug addicts, and that the main character's love interest, his brother, was a drug addict. And there's like this little tense moment between these two characters. And so then I'm thinking, okay, the big plot twist of this book is that the editor, like his love interest, the brother who's a drug addict, he is going to be the person who is writing this book. Even though we've been like seeing them meet up with like the author of this book, and her name is Lana, but I'm like, it's gonna be revealed that the drug addict brother is this, and it's gonna finally create some kind of like tension and some angst in the story. I was close but no cigar. Close only counts on horseshoes and hand grenades. So what it really was our main character's father. Yeah, this alcoholic man was writing the most moving piece of literature ever to exist. And so late one morning after the gala, after they've been boning all night. Also, there's a lot of sex in this book. Is the sex good? Sure. It's some good sex scenes. But I also, to be fair, thought based on the audiobook cover that one of these people was a male of color, but these are just two white men. Two white men, so I was bored. Um sorry. Um but late one morning, the main character, he gets like 13 calls in a row. He gets 13 calls in a row from a hospital. And eventually he picks up on the 13th ring. And he's like, "Hello, who is this?" And they're like, "Yeah, we need you because your father is here." And mind you, again, like we know that he views his stepfather as his father. And he's like, "Well, you can just talk to my mom." And like he hangs up. And then he decides, you know what, maybe we should go to the hospital afterwards. Anyway, and so he drags his love interest out of bed with him and forces this man to drive him to the hospital. When they get to the hospital, the nurse is like, "Well, we had to evacuate your father because again, it's his birth father, biological father, because he was going into rapid liver failure and we can't have him here. Like he had to go somewhere else. Couldn't happen here." And so now there's like he forces this man to like drive him an hour away. And there's relationship, this dynamic between these two men. This is like literally the only time there's like a modicum of what is the word I'm looking for? Of tension, of conflict between these two people. But what really killed me was this man wanted to yell at the love interest, talking about I should have been there and I wasn't there. And it's like this man told you to answer the phone. This man told you you should go. He's the only reason you are even at the hospital. And now for you to be so resentful of this man because you couldn't be there with your neglectful dying daddy when he was giving his last breaths or whatever. And then again, like I told you, it comes out that he was the one who was writing the book, and then they decided to post after he's dead. They published the book. Also, they published like some random military propaganda book, like a coffee table. It was weird. And once I found out that Chip Pons was in the Air Force, you can't trust no Air Force gay. You just can't do it. I'm sorry. It's just all, it was all very weird. It was all just a very weird little book that was not a romance. It was general fiction masquerading as a romance, which is why I think it was so bad, because it wasn't a romance. Like the book was not about our main character and his love interest. It was about our main character kind of being insufferable and like a little bit weird. And I don't want to say author insert because I don't know Chip Pons like that, but it was just not good. And I can tell you that much. I can tell you that. I will say that it was nice to read from like a top. Most of these little male romance books are written from the perspective like our main character's the bottom, and that wasn't really the case here. So I guess that was nice. But otherwise, it was just like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Like, what was the point of any of this little sad book about, like, I guess, like reconnecting with her drug addict parent? But like, our main character didn't want to do that. Like, that wasn't even the journey that we were on in this book. Like, it was a series of events strung together, and it just was put out in the world. I don't know if You and I Rewritten was traditionally published or if this was self-published, and now Chip Pons is coming out with his like traditional publishing debut, on NetGalley. I think it's called Winging It, but don't hold me to that. But this was bad, not very good at all. I was thinking I was going to talk to you guys about Onyx Storm, but like, what is there to talk about? What is there to talk about? I read this on Aaron's Discord because I am an Amazon Music free trial member, and I got my little 3-month trial like everybody else, because if they're going to give me a whole audiobook for free 99, of course I'm going to do it. So I had my first book in December, and my January selection was of course Onyx Storm, because I was not going to be fighting the girlies in Target. I was not going to be fighting the girlies at Barnes and Noble. I was not going to be fighting Amazon. Although I did want to have to fight Amazon because I had to wait till like 2 o'clock in the morning, but that was everybody. But I listened to this book. I listened to it over the course of 2 days, and I say, what is it to talk about? But at this point, Rebecca Yarros, I think, has nothing to say in the series. She has nothing to say in the series, and I just kind of have to accept that. Like, I can't wish for the series to be more than what it is ever going to be. And I think that nothing exemplifies that more than in this book. And I say that because for as much as she attempted to make this world feel larger than it was, because for I don't want to say significant portion, but for a decent chunk of this book, Violet and her cohort get to leave the continent, and they go to this island chain, and they are searching the Isles for more of the species of dragon that Andarna belongs to. And so we're seeing lore dropped, right? So we're learning, the continent has like a real name. It's not just called the fucking continent. And we get to see the cultures that exist on these islands. But it feels hollow. It doesn't feel thought out in the way that I think fans of Rebecca Yarros are going to tell me that it is, or Rebecca Yarros would tell me in an interview. It just kind of feels like someone who got critiques of the world feeling very like very small because we were just at Basgiath in the first book, and then in the second book we kind of like branch out a little bit, and we get to see the region that Xaden is from, and we get to see, I think, the country like right next to them. The ones who were the Griffin Riders are from, so we get to see kind of like that culture, and again like Xaden's culture. But we're also immediately brought back to Basgiath. Like so much of the story is at this one place, and so in this one, for it to like open up and we're seeing more parts of the continent, and we're seeing more parts of the world at large that are not necessarily the continent. But all of it just feels very, see, this exists and this exists, but it doesn't feel like there's any exchange happening here outside of these gods that they don't play into the story. Like it'd be one thing if like these gods are like a really big part of the story, but the gods are not part of the story. Like the religious aspects of these this pantheon does not really play in. And so like even when the characters are drawing connections between the islands and how they all kind of have like this similar pantheon, it doesn't mean anything because these things are not necessarily part of these characters' daily lives in the way that I think that religion can be in a fantasy world. Not necessarily, not that it has to be, but it can be. And so my issue with Onyx Storm is, for as much as it tries to expand the scope and the story and the themes, it just felt very suffocating. And there's nothing more, I think, illustrative of that fact than the fact that this is at its core a romantasy series. And so even though all of these things are happening and Violet has all of these things that she needs to be doing, every second of her life, every thought in her head is about Xaden. Now, if you haven't read Iron Flame, then there's going to be obviously spoilers here for the ending of that book. But we find out in that book that Xaden has become there's a conflict between Violet. I'm not going to spoil things, but there is something going on with Xaden that Violet should be very concerned about, and everybody else is more concerned than she is. And she is just solely focused on trying to fix this issue that Xaden has, even though there's no solution to this problem. I mean, there is going to be a solution because, again, it's romantasy, so there's going to be a solution, or the problem is going to be what we think the problem is, and actually, it's been whatever. But the problem, as it currently stands, and our understanding, it exists, right? There's a problem that exists, and while it is a big problem, and we should kind of look at that problem, we should also remember, that there are other things happening. But Violet is solely focused on Xaden. She is solely focused on this man, and it's a little bit weird and a little bit like, what are we doing here? She also, again, like I told you, they're looking for the rest of the species that Andarna belongs to, and that is paid like dust. Even though, in the grand scheme of things, it is definitely painted as though this is the actual solution to the larger world-ending problem that the Venin and the people who are Dark Wielders are currently attacking the continent. They are sweeping through the place, okay? They have no chance against these Dark Wielders. The Dark Wielders are a clear and present danger that we should be addressing, but we are focused on Xaden. We are focused on these two people in love. And what I really appreciate about the rest of the squad was like, they were calling it out in a way that makes it very clear that Rebecca Garros knows this is a problem, but we're not going to fix it because, again, this isn't a fantasy. This is a romantasy. And I think this is where, for me, the genre just like isn't the best, because I also see this similar take on TikTok a lot, where it's like, oh, people talk about fairy smut. They talk about like, it's like they call these books fairy smut. They call these books dragon smut, but they don't talk about these like larger things. And I really want to hold people's hands when I say this, but like the authors don't care about those things. For every sex scene that there is in Onyx Storm, and there aren't like, it's not like, wall to wall sex. It's not in every chapter there's a sex scene, but for every sex scene there is in Onyx Storm, there is like half as much detail or attention or care placed into making the world actually feel real. It just feels like, here's things about this world. The thing that happened in Fourth Wing that everyone hated was when Violet was telling herself facts about her history, and they're like, this is like the weirdest nervous tick ever. And I personally didn't care about that. But the way that the information is released in Onyx Storm about these islands, about the things that are happening on these islands, it feels very much, it's that same energy. It's where it's like, okay, sure, I know facts and figures, but these aren't real tangible cultures. These aren't real tangible, characters or things that are happening in these people's lives. Like, it is a deeply unserious text. It just is. Like, that's my issue with Onyx Storm is, and I can appreciate unseriousness, but at a certain point, it's like we were 3 books deep into a 5-book series, and there has been zero progress made. Obviously, Fourth Wing kind of just sets up a lot of stuff, and the ball gets rolling into Iron Flame. But by Onyx Storm, for us to have like literally no idea like how we're going to solve this problem with the venom, and we keep ending on these cliffhangers that are really nothing burgers. They're nothing burgers, and they're very similar nothing burgers between Iron Flame, that nothing burger, and the nothing burger that's the cliffhanger of Onyx Storm, where it's like, okay, like sure, but also note that both of these cliffhangers are again directly tied into the romantic connection of these stories. They're not tied into any broader, like the political happenings, the war, like that kind of a thing. Now, you can make the argument, you can theorize that the cliffhanger ending of Onyx Storm is going to result in forging an alliance with one of the islands, where they were like, they went to the island and the island had a list of demands that they were unwilling to meet. But I don't think that's going to play well for them. That's the other problem, where it's like magic in this world seems to like, I don't necessarily understand how it works. It seems that dragons exist in places where there is magic. Um in terms of like they set up their hatching grounds in places where there's magic. So one would assume that there is ambient magic there. But I feel like dragons bring the magic to these places. Even though I guess Andarna and Terran, like, I mean, Andarna feels like that's not the case. Andarna's like, oh no, my people would not have been on this island when they get to one that doesn't really have magic. But I don't really know if that's true. So the point is, like, the things that the Zane has gone to forge this alliance with that you could theorize. Again, I don't know. I don't know if that's. I feel like that's a very charitable reading, but it's also maybe charitable, yes, but also like the necessary reading. But again, to me, it's more of like a cliffhanger. The thing that really hits the punch is the romantic connection. Like, it's not the broader themes of these novels. So to me, Onyx Storm was like, in terms of like the context of the Empyrean, it was a fine book. In terms of the overall genre, like it was okay. Like it wasn't the worst book in the series. It wasn't the best book in the series. It was just a book in the series. And for it to be this hullabaloo and this drama and people fighting people in Target over a book, like, I don't say let's be serious, because you can't be serious with this book, but let's be honest with ourselves and call a spade and say this book was not good. It was not good. We also like actively this wasn't a good time. So overall, would I recommend you guys rush out and read Onyx Storm? No, I would not. I don't think you need to read the Empyrean at all. And if you were going to read the Empyrean, at this point, just wait. Like, Rebecca Yarros probably knows where the story is going, but by the time we get there, this definitely could have been a duology. Definitely could have been a duology, both in terms of like the timeline of events happening, but also like some of the reveals are just like not necessary. Like some of these reveals, some of these things could have been cut. And if we weren't going to be a duology, it definitely could have been a trilogy. These next two little bonus books is clearly, Entangled wanting money and Entangled having nobody on their editing staff. So that's an issue that I had with Onyx Storm. That was my reading experience. I will be back probably in a couple days to kind of wrap this up, because the month is almost over. My January reset has not been going to plan. I thought it was going to be like new January, new Monty. Nope. So I am here to wrap this up, which feels strange in part because I don't remember the last thing we talked about. I wouldn't say it was my discussion on Onyx Storm, because that was the last full-length book that I finished this month. I'm still in the middle of two other books that I thought I would finish today, and then I just decided to do no reading. I read 5 books over the course of the month, and again, I started 2 others, and I'm content with that. It's not like the most amount of books I've ever read. Last year was already a very drastic decline from like my normal reading. I don't even think I had 100 books last year. I don't think I did. I think I hit like 98. I don't know. 2024 was a weird reading year, and by far it was my worst reading year since I started making booktube content. I'm going to say I made like 3 or 4 booktube videos, which again, a new record low since like 2016 era Monty, which again, I'm actually kind of fine with, to be honest with you. I made like 6 public facing videos. Me and the paywall, me and Patreon are besties. If you are like, oh my goodness, where's Monty? Where's Monty? He is over on Patreon. Patreon got like hundreds of videos last year. I want to say at least 150 videos. That might be kind of a stretch, but not too far off, because I daily vlog for them for 6 months, and most months have 30 days. I think 5 of them have 30 days. So yeah, that's already 150 videos. And then you add in, what what is it, February 28th. So that's what, 170 videos. So they got like 200 videos over there on Patreon. Now, are they the best highly produced vlogs you've ever seen in your life? No, no, they are not. But that's where I am. That's where I reside. And then even in the off months, like I said, they get like a regular vlog situation. So the, I did make content. Me and the editing bay have been besties. Okay. Me and talking about books outside of Goodreads, that did happen. But it didn't happen publicly because, to be honest with you, I just didn't have the energy. Didn't have the energy and didn't have the routine. Will I have the routine in 2025? Probably not, because again, I only read 5 books in the first month of the year, and I didn't really vlog them. I came in after the fact and did that, and I don't necessarily hate that either. We'll see if I do that going forward. I do know that you will get at least. I'm gonna say you're gonna get at least one video in February that will be asking a lot of me to do 2 videos for you guys back to back, in addition to daily vlogging over there for the patrons. But I'm gonna attempt to do it. I think I'm gonna give you another Dr. Professor Ali Hazelwood, because I just got the audio for Deep End, or Wet, as it was formerly titled. So I will be reading that, and that might be the public video because that might get some kind of engagement. So YouTube doesn't think that I'm dead. And I'm so much, alive. So that might be a public facing video that I do. And that again might be more of a review situation. I haven't decided what I'm doing there yet. But yeah, we talked about Onyx Storm and how I felt that book was pretty claustrophobic. And of the books that I talked to you guys about, it really was a steep decline. The only book that I did not talk to you guys about that I did read last month was The Four by Ellie Keel, because the vlog for that, I say vlog, that actually was a vlog. I checked in a couple of times with that video. That was a vlog situation, and I did not like that book. It is kind of billed as dark academia. I didn't really have expectations going in other than it was supposed to be dark academia. I don't think that it is, and I do think that it's wasted your time. I can't say go watch the Patreon vlog because it does get into spoilers. So to say the unspoilery thoughts, I think that it's almost very similar to Onyx Storm in a sense that it also feels a little bit claustrophobic. Our main character there, Rose, I believe is her name. Rose is part of a friend group who is there at the school on kind of a scholarship basis, and she's just kept out of the loop for no reason other than plot conveniences. And then the further the book goes on, the further unmoored from the friend group at the beginning she is. And it doesn't necessarily to me make a whole lot of sense. And a lot of the things that are happening, ostensibly it's supposed to be a book about hiding somebody in plain sight, and I don't think that it works necessarily. I think that it's written in an era to like make the again to make it easier for the plot to work. And I think that Ellie Keel is talented on a sensing and instruction level. The disconnect for me in The Four is really that I don't think that it had any kind of good storytelling. I felt that there were aspects of that book, the novel, that were kind of dropped in on the reader as like shock and awe moments, and they did shock me. And I won't say I was awed, but I was shocked, and I felt like that was the point. Like, and it was just not necessarily the way that I would have liked that elements of the story to be incorporated. Like, I don't think we should be dropping in sexual assaults as kind of like shock and awe moments to keep the reader emotionally invested. I think that if you're a talented writer the way that she is, then like you can maybe craft a character that I would be engaged in, or a scenario that I'm engaged in, and not to be like, and then they were raped, and then they were raped again, and then somebody else at the school was also. It was just a lot in very short succession. So The Four did not work for me. You and I Rewritten, I told you guys that already, that was a chop. No, Your Newlyweds was a chop. I don't even understand how that came into be, where there's like 2 authors and it's produced by Elena Armis and it's audio only. That I don't think was ever going to work for Monty, specifically because Elena Armis and I are not necessarily besties. And so her kind of directing 2 authors, like how to write a story, and then it's all audio only, and these aren't people who are, like basic understanding, like that's not necessarily the medium that they write for. They write, traditional novels. It was just a lot to ask. So maybe that wasn't necessarily the fairest shake of the thing I could have given, but that was again not the greatest. So the highlight of the month of the things that I finished was what I started the year off with, which was The Favorite. I do believe that this had a sort of Carrie Soto is that kind of a vibe. I really appreciated looking at Ice Dance. I haven't read any books about ice dance or really watched ice dance be competed at all. So that was a really interesting way to start off the year, and I liked the way that it played with time. Normally I'm not a fan of that, but I liked the kind of repartee between the sort of like documentary style in the present with these characters kind of acknowledging something, and then us flashing back and being in the moment and seeing the journey that our characters got to go on. I really did enjoy The Favorite, and I wound up signing up for Book of the Month again just so I could get a copy of the favorites from them because, $5 for that book, a lot cheaper than just, walking down to Books A Million. So I did restart my book of the month subscription just to get a copy of the favorites. So initially when I was reading it, I thought that maybe just because of the ending, I do think that the ending's it subverts it in a way that is just expected. I think that it wasn't supposed to be expected. I think you were supposed to think that it wouldn't do that but ultimately I think that it makes the most sense for that story to do that. And I felt like not doing what they did in that ending would have been the actual subversion. You know what I mean? Like that would have been like, oh, okay, cool. Like let's do this thing instead. And so maybe that to me was like the laziest thing that Lane Fargo did in that novel. But as where Ellie Keel does not have good storytelling, I felt that not only was Lane Fargo good on a writing level, but I was engaged and engrossed, and those characters, all of them, felt very complex and very real, and I was very invested in their story and in their lives. Like there was a point where I think when I was going to go see A Complete Unknown, where I was at the mall and I was sitting in the food court just listening to the book. I had a couple of minutes, to kill before the movie started, and I was just sitting there listening to the book. And I don't just sit and listen to books. Usually, I'm on my way to work, I'm at work, I'm doing things. So for me to just sit still and listen to the favorites, I think also shows just how engaged, engrossed I was in that story. So the month really started off with a real high there. And if I had managed to finish Twisted Love by Anna Wong and Fan Service by Rosie Danan, I think we could have ended the month with some bangers as well, because I was really enjoying Twisted Love and Fan Service for two completely different reasons. Twisted Love, I don't think is again the world's best written book. And I don't even think the love interest in that book is the world's greatest character. But having read so many romances recently where the characters are saying all the right things, and it just feels like I'm listening to two people in a therapy session and not really seeing two people fall in love. There's something about that main character, that man character, who's just run away, girl. Do not talk to him. Run away. I don't care that that's your brother's best friend. Run away. There's something about that. I'm just you know what? I'm eating it up. I see the appeal. Now, am I going to go dark into the depths of dark romance? No, I'm not. But here, I can stick with the red flag romance. So I'm very much looking forward to continuing on with Twisted Love and down into my Anna Wong era. I do plan on reading everything that she's written this year, so we'll see if I can manage to do that before the year is over. We're going into February and I'm still haven't finished. And I also still have another technical long-term project that is sitting on my hard drive that I'd probably finish first. But Anna Wong's books are going to be a lot easier to read than the other long-form projects, so who knows if that's ever going to see the light of day. So that was the thing that I started. And then Rosie Danan, I love Rosie Danan, okay? Now, have I read The Roommate? No, I have not. Did not read The Roommate. But I did read The Intimacy Experiment. I want to say that was one of my first Vlogmases. And I read that and I was just this is good. And then I read Do Your Worst, which was the haunted castle book. And that was fun too. And Fan Service is giving Supernatural meets Teen Wolf meets actual werewolf. And I didn't think that Rosie Danan was going to go to actual werewolf. So when I saw the book was going to actual werewolf pretty early on, I was okay, this is a lot more interesting. Because I think that Do Your Worst was fun. And I appreciated their giving hints and nods, maybe this is a cursed situation. But to me, Do Your Worst really felt it wasn't necessarily a curse. It could have gone either way. There was room for interpretation. And yes, one of the characters was a curse breaker and that was playing into some of the things that were happening in that story. But overall, I do feel it could have gone either way. Fan services, at least where I'm at in the story, is giving very much real werewolf. This is a real thing that's happening. And this is a real present problem for these two people. And the two people in the story also have an interesting sort of one-sided grudge situation happening. And I'm very much eating that up. So I dare say that Fan Service, when I finish it, is also going to be teetering on that 4 or 5 star front, as is Twisted Love, which I never would have guessed, because way back in the day, the second book in that series, Twisted Game, was a book club book for somebody's romance book club. I want to say it was Jess from Peace Love Books, and I tried reading it back in the Kindle Unlimited era, and I couldn't get into it. I just could not bring myself to care about Anna Wong and her writing. And I remember going to the gym and it was late at night and I was on the treadmill and I had my Kindle and I was reading the Kindle. Couldn't do it. But for whatever reason, even though this is one of the worst audiobook experiences that I've ever had, both the female and male narrators of Twisted Love are god awful. 12 out of 10 would not recommend. I'm eating up the story. So I think that is, again, promising things that I have to look forward to in the future. As for February, like I said, you guys will get a discussion from me about the next Dr. Professor Ali Hazelwood. I will be clocked in, ready to go as soon as literally tomorrow. I have plans tomorrow, and I'm going to have a big chunk of time I'm seeing 2 movies tomorrow. So between my 2 movies, I'm going to be listening to that book for sure. Might do some walking around, doing some errand hunting. But yeah, so you'll be seeing me again potentially in the near future. But for now, thanks for joining me on my January reset. I think at the beginning, I really wanted to set out and like find a reading routine and like do some things that benefited me. But as the world caught on fire around me and horrible thing after horrible thing was in the news, I was really okay with January just getting through the month. And I did get through the month. I managed to land another job, so I'm starting that soon. I managed to put some money in my savings account for the first time in like my adult life, so like love that for me. I'm not necessarily living paycheck to paycheck. There is a small cushion in a savings account now, so it's just like look at me, like a month of expenses saved up. Who would have guessed? So I didn't necessarily reset my reading life, but I feel like I've reset my adulthood, and so I'll check in, when I'm talking about the Ali Hazelwood with you guys. But for now, thanks for being here. I know the world is catching on fire and like every bad thing is happening that could possibly happen, but hopefully you found a nugget of something that was able to anchor you in the present and to keep you reminded that, light things, happy things, good things are also possible. And, don't don't sink into the depths of the despair. Do believe that like happiness and joy is necessary in these dark times, and so whatever that means, whatever that's going to take for you guys to find it, I hope you're able to do that. So thanks for being here, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again in this in the future at some point, but until then and until next time, stay safe, stay hydrated. Bye.